Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the absolute magic and really the hardcore science behind how your favorite affordable sparkling wines actually get their fizz. There is an unbelievable amount of engineering behind that satisfying pop of the cork.
I mean, think about it. Think about the last time you poured a fresh glass of Prosecco or maybe a Lambrusco. You probably took a second just to admire that lively rush of bubbles, right? Anticipating those crisp, fruity aromas hitting your nose. But have you ever actually stopped to wonder how those exact bubbles are crafted so perfectly, bottle after bottle? Well, the answer comes down to a brilliant industrial process developed back in the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
To figure out exactly how those bubbles get into your glass, we'll be moving through 5 quick stages in our agenda today. 1. The secret behind the bubbles. 2. Famous Charmat sparkling wines. 3. Crafting the base wine. 4. Fermentation in the autoclave. And 5. Moving from tank to bottle.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, the secret behind the bubbles.
Okay, so the core secret? It all comes down to how we trap carbon dioxide. Now, the traditional method, which is what they use for champagne, involves this super time-consuming second fermentation that happens right inside the actual individual glass bottle you buy. But the Charmat method, also known as the Martinotti method after the Italian inventor, it takes a completely different route. It ingeniously uses these massive, closed, pressurized stainless steel tanks called autoclaves to whip up that fizz way more efficiently and on a much larger scale. And looking at the map of Europe here, there's actually a really distinct geographic divide when it comes to these two techniques. Over in Spain and France, they strongly favor that traditional bottle method for their cava and champagne. But move over to Italy and Germany, and they rely heavily on this large tank Charmat method to pump out their incredibly popular, highly exported sparkling wines. It's just a totally different winemaking philosophy. Moving on to section 2, famous Charmat sparkling wines.
Now, the Charmat method isn't a one-trick pony. It gives us some incredibly diverse flavor profiles. Just checking out this breakdown, from Italy alone, we've got Prosecco from the Veneto region using the Glera grape. We've got the sweet Asti from Piedmont made with Moscato Bianco, and the deeply colored red Lambruscos of Emilia-Romagna. And of course, we definitely can't forget Germany's precise Sekt wines, which can be multivarietal or use their famous local Riesling grapes.
Let's zoom in on Prosecco for a second, because wow, its rise has been nothing short of meteoric. Famous for its pale straw color and those fresh notes of white stone fruits, Prosecco has literally dethroned champagne as the #1 exported sparkling wine globally. No joke. And it generally comes in 3 distinct quality tiers, peaking at the Conegliano Valdobbiadene DOCG Prosecco Superiore, which has the absolute strictest production standards of the bunch. But hey, the Charmat method isn't just for white wines. If you're a fan of reds, Lambrusco has you covered with incredible variety. It ranges from the light ruby Sobara to the much deeper ruby Salamino. But the real showstopper? That's the Grosserosa. It delivers this intense ruby color, a super distinct cherry-colored foam, and a beautifully balanced savory and fruity taste. So how do we actually make them? Let's hit section 3, crafting the base wine. Right, so the absolute foundation of any great sparkling wine is a very specific type of base wine. The crucial first step here involves picking the grapes deliberately early, before what's called physiological maturity, basically before the grapes get too sweet. They do this specifically to keep the potential alcohol low and the acidity nice and high. Then, after pressing, winemakers use a process called cold static racking. This involves low temperatures, clarifying enzymes, and just a touch of sulfur dioxide to fiercely protect that delicate juice from any unwanted oxidation. They want a pristine, pale, crisp canvas to work with. Now, you might be wondering, why keep the alcohol level so strictly moderate in that base wine? Well, it all boils down to one defining term: perlage. Perlage basically refers to the integration and the elegant size of the bubbles in your glass. Since ethanol helps dissolve carbon dioxide into the liquid, winemakers need a very precise, moderate alcohol level, along with a perfectly controlled secondary fermentation, just to ensure those bubbles integrate elegantly rather than being harsh or overly aggressive. Which brings us to the really fun part, section 4, fermentation in the autoclave. To transform that completely flat base wine into a sparkling masterpiece, winemakers introduce what is known as a pied de cuve. This is a carefully measured starter mixture of sugars and a massive, massive population of selected yeast. We're literally talking 1 to 2 million yeast cells per milliliter. This highly potent mixture gets added directly into the base wine to kickstart that all-important second fermentation. As enology expert Hidalgo points out, doing this second fermentation inside pressurized stainless steel tanks, the autoclaves, is the defining ingenious hallmark of the whole Charmat process. I mean, these tanks are literal marvels of modern winemaking. They're outfitted with highly precise heating and cooling systems to maintain a perfect 16 to 18 degrees Celsius. So the yeast ferments the sugar, creating alcohol and CO2. But because the tank is completely sealed tight, that CO2 has nowhere to escape. It's forced to dissolve right back into the wine. Then, after about 9 to 10 days, once it hits the perfect pressure, the winemaker rapidly drops the temperature to stop the fermentation dead in its tracks. And finally, we're at the finish line. Section 5, from tank to bottle. This last phase is highly technical. First up, the autoclaves actually use internal agitators to stir up the spent yeast cells, a process called autolysis, which adds some wonderful texture and flavor to the wine. Next, the wine has to be meticulously filtered to make it crystal clear. But here's the catch. This has to be done isobarically, which means under constant pressure so we don't lose the bubbles. After that, it gets stabilized at a freezing -4 degrees Celsius before, once again, being isobarically bottled and immediately sealed. I do want to highlight one super specific choice that premium winemakers make right at the end here. It might be tempting to use high heat, a shortcut known as thermolysis, to speed up the breakdown of those yeast cells in the tank. But top-tier producers avoid it like the plague. Testing actually proves that heating the wine to around 40 degrees Celsius seriously degrades the delicate, fresh quality of the final product. So they stick to the classic mechanical agitation, taking just a little bit more time and care to preserve all those beautiful, fresh aromas. When you take a step back and look at it, what is truly staggering about the Charmat method is the sheer efficiency of the engineering. I mean, from the exact moment that yeast starter is dropped into the base wine, all the way through the pressurized fermentation, the chilling, the filtering, and into the final sealed bottle, this entire massive industrial process takes an incredibly fast 21 to 30 days. It is a total marvel of consistent, high-quality production. So it really leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to ponder. The next time you're out at a celebration and you hear that joyful pop of a Prosecco or a Lambrusco bottle, will you just be tasting the grapes from the vineyard? Or will you be tasting the brilliant, precise, century-old engineering of the pressurized autoclave? Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer. I really hope you found the science behind the bubbles as captivating as I do. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you on the next one.